Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unknown. I hope you guys have been enjoying this series. Tonight, I'm very excited about the podcast we have for you. I got Dan here on the line with me, and Dan is a veteran from the Air Force. He's actually was in the military police, and he's had several encounters with Bigfoot, but tonight he's going to talk about an encounter that happened to him when he was a kid in Washington State. So I'm going to let him jump right into it. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, Josh? How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. Had my coffee, pumped up, ready to hear your story. So why don't you just start off from the beginning and let us know what happened?
Sure. Well, the first, like I said, I've had a few experiences, but the first sighting that I had, that there was no question what I saw is what I saw. And not only did I see it, my dad also saw it. It was in a town called Graham, Washington, which is near Mount Rainier. It's close to Puyallup, Washington, and it's about 1984, 1985, so I was around, I want to say maybe 11, 12 years old, 12, 13, probably around that time frame, and it was the probably late March, early April time frame, and what had happened is my brother and I, we decided we were done with my mom and my stepdad, well, more of my stepdad. And we wanted to live with my dad. My dad was just newly single, and when we moved in with him, we found out he was living in an adult trailer park. So no kids were allowed; it was only adults. But he had talked with the owners, and they were like, "Okay, as long as they don't do this, they don't do that. There's rules." So we followed the rules, made ourselves a little helpful, and my dad just realized this was not a place for us to grow up. So what he did is he went out and he bought 5 acres of land, and it wasn't too far from where the adult RV park was. Now, he was living in a fifth wheel. I'll just say camper because, a lot of people not sure what a fifth wheel is, but we were living in a camper. What we had done is my dad had dropped my brother and I off in Tacoma, Washington to stay spring break with my aunt and uncle. And while we were there, he had moved the fifth wheel, the camper, out to this land, had clear cut some of it, put it on there, built a nice deck with like nice little awning and roof on there. My dad loved watching birds, so he'd put a big metal pole right next to the deck with a metal base. And what he wanted to do was put a nice bird feeder up there so he could take pictures of all these different birds that were coming in. And that pole and that base comes into play on my story. So he goes and picks us up. We come home, and this is when we first see it. He passes the RV park, like, where are we going? He goes, I want to show you guys something. And he pulls down this road, turns on another road, goes all the way down to the very end, and he turns right onto this long gravel road. Now, this gravel road was kind of like hilly. It would go a little straight away, then it would come up, and then it would go, and then it would go back down. And it was about a 5.5 mile long road, and we lived about halfway down the middle. Now, again, this is important. At the very beginning of this gravel road, there was one street light. That was it. There were no more lights going down this gravel road at all. When he pulled off into it, there's our camper. And he goes, this is our home. So he showed us all around and stuff. And I'm like, Dad, is this our place? He's like, yeah. And we walked a little way from it, and he had started clearing trees and stuff. He was going to build a house for us with the lumber on the property, and he said, this is going to be our forever home. Awesome. So as time went on, we would clear and stuff like that, and I remember one day we were coming back from Tacoma on a weekend, and it was early in the morning. It was like 1, 2 in the morning, and as we go off the paved road down the gravel road we're driving, we come up one of those little humps, kind of go, and something catches my eye. I see like this eye shine or something, and it just didn't look right to me. The color was off. I was like, Dad, there's something up in the road. And he goes, I didn't see it. I go, Dad, it's on my side. There's something up the road. Turn your brights on. And he goes, oh, well, if it saw our lights, it's going to be gone, so I'm not going to worry about it, right? So we go down, we go back down a dip, we come back up, and I go, Dad, hit your brights. I just saw it again. So now, as he goes back down another one of these little humps, comes back up, he turns his brights on. And as we get to the top of it, there she was. Probably about 35 to 40 feet away from us, standing on the side of the road, on the passenger side of the road. And she was squatted down. And yes, I'm saying she, because when she stood up, number one, I didn't think she was ever going to stop rising. I mean, she was big, probably 7.5, 8 feet tall. And when she turned, now I've heard stories, people say, oh, they turned their head. No, they have to turn their body at the waist, okay? It has something to do with the way their neck is, or what. I mean, have you ever seen a gorilla turn its head? No, they go like this, you know? And when she turned to face us, that's when I noticed that she had breasts. She was like a dark or a light charcoal color. Her skin was black. Her face had gorilla-ish, features. Her hands had, it was all long hair. Parts of her breast were bare. And she turned like in one fluid motion and then took like 2 steps off, and then she was gone. Now, we're still driving. My dad didn't stop the vehicle. We're still driving, and as we're passing by, my dad had these new fog lights on that he flipped on, so it kind of gives you a more wider angle of vision. And as we were driving, there was still enough light that when I looked out my window, because I was sitting in the passenger seat, I saw her just inside the woods. Now, this is probably 10 to 15 feet from the edge of the road. I saw her clear enough to where I watched her eyes blink. And then I noticed that my dad had sped up, went into our land, our parking, our driveway. Before the car was even in park, I was already opening up the door, jumping out of the car at a run with my key in hand, opening up the door. Now, shortly after I got that key in to unlock that door, my dad was right behind me holding my little brother. I didn't even shut the car door. I run in, my dad puts my little brother up in his bed, and I'm like, Dad, what was that? He's like, you know what that was? And I go, Dad, did you see what I see? He's like, I absolutely saw what you saw. I go, Dad, he goes, listen, don't worry about a thing. I go, Dad, can I please sleep with you tonight? He's like, yeah, you can sleep with me tonight. So I jump in his bed real quick, and I'm covered up. Now, his bed was like in the living room. He slept on like a hide-a-bed. There's a queen-size hide-a-bed. And our beds were up above in like this little thing that came up like this, so up like this. And then a truck would come up underneath it, And I slept on a side. If you're looking out the front, I slept on the left side. My brother slept on the right side. My dad slept down right below us. So I jump in bed with him, but he's not in bed. He's going through the cupboards in the kitchen. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, don't worry about it. Well, he's grabbing like carrots and celery and fruit, and he goes outside and he puts it down on the table that's on our deck. Then he goes around the front of the camper. I hear him shut the car door. And he goes to this little shed that he had built. Now I'm freaking out because we just saw something that shouldn't exist. Okay? As clear as day. And I hear him unlock the shed. I hear him rummage around. I hear him shut the door, lock it, and he comes back, and he's got this tube of like axle grease or whatever. So he gets his ladder, puts it up against this pole, goes up and puts this fruits and vegetables, up on this metal platform that he had on there that was intended to hold a bird feeder. He gets down, takes the tube of axle grease, puts it into a rag, and then puts it all up and down the pole. I don't know why, but that completely broke my concentration on what we just saw. I'm wondering, why is he putting grease on this pole? And I go, Dad, why are you doing that? He goes, so nothing can grab that food. And I go, oh, you mean like raccoons? And he's like, yeah, exactly, raccoons. I'm like, okay. So he comes in, and my dad was a smoker. He never smoked inside the camper, so he I hear him talking. He's right outside the door, and I hear him talking. And I'm nosy, so I kind of put my ear up to the door, and I hear him say something like, "You know, we saw you." And he's not like having this conversation. He's like saying, "We know we saw you. You know, we don't want no problems. It's just me and my boys out here. We want to make this our home. We won't bother you. You know, we'll leave you alone. You know, this up here's for you. Just please don't hurt my boys." And I go, "Dad, who are you talking to?" When he came in, and he goes, "I was praying." And I go, "Well, you didn't say amen." You know. And then he goes out and he goes, "Amen." And okay, so he goes and he takes a shower. He comes back in and he gets in bed. He's like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay, Dad." He's like, do you still want to sleep? And I go, "Yeah, I still want to sleep with you." So as I'm laying in bed, his side is nearest the door. Okay, and I don't know, it's probably an hour, 2 hours later, and I'm just getting ready to doze off, and I hear this loud creak, like something heavy is stepping onto the deck. And then I hear another footstep. Now, I've played in the woods my entire life, okay? I know what two legs sound like going through the woods. I know what two legs sound like stepping onto something. I know what four-legged animal sounds like. It was step, 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 and then I heard another step, 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 and I wake up. You know, I thought I was just dreaming, and I look over at my dad, and my dad's like this. He's like, shh. And I go, "Dad." And about that time, I heard, "Oh, no, 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 no." And I'm like, I'm freaking out. Like, I'm like, "Dad." He's like, and he reaches over and he grabs his gun, and he rests it on his chest. There's a 357 Magnum. It's the only gun I've ever known my dad to own. And he's like this, and he does this. And I'm like, "There's three." He goes, "There's three out there." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So we're listening to what I believe, even to this day, I believe it's vocalizations. Like they're having conversation with each other. I heard multiple sets of footsteps walking up on and around. When I woke up to the sun shining onto my face through the window of the door. Now, it wasn't like you could see out the window. It was like one had like a frosted whatever, but still the light would come through. And I jump out of bed, and I immediately open up the door, and I look. And where I'm standing, I can see there's no fruit. There's no fruit. There's no vegetables. And so I start looking closer, and you could see where something had grabbed the pole. And then you could see something where it ran its finger down the pole. It's like a single line in this grease. And I go, "Holy S," super loud enough to where my brother wakes up. And then my dad wakes up. He's like, "What happened?" I go, "Dad, it's gone. The food, it's all gone." And I go, "Something grabbed this pole." And he's like, he goes, "Are you sure it's all gone?" I go, "Dad, look." And he went and he saw it wasn't there. And my brother comes out. He goes, "What grabbed that pole?" And my dad, quick thinking, goes, "A raccoon." And my brother's like, "Oh, okay. Why would you put food up on the top there, Dad?" I don't remember what my dad said, but he said something where my brother goes, "Okay," and goes back in the house, goes back in the camper. So that was my first sighting and the encounter with that. Now, I'm going to tell you, we lived on this land. We didn't live on it for more than maybe a year because my dad was involved in a very, very bad car accident. Was almost killed. And we had to move from that property back to Tacoma, Washington, and moved in with my aunt and my uncle and my two cousins. And my dad wound up losing the property because he was out of work for almost a year. But I will say, when we went back to the property to get some of our belongings and stuff from the camper, the window that was next to my bedroom. Now the windows were like this, probably like this wide and like maybe this long. So maybe 6 inches, 8 inches wide by maybe 18 inches long, and they had a little crank and they would open up. I looked out that window from being up there, and I saw where it looks like something had tried to look through. So you saw this part of the hand that was pressed up against it. So, and in order for something to look like that, you had to be at least 8 to 9 feet tall. Another incident that happened around that time is we had a really bad storm that was hitting, and thunder, lightning. I mean, it was something like out of a movie almost. I mean, just loud, big booms of lightning, huge, booms of thunder, huge just flashes of lightning, wind blowing. And my dad had that camper strapped down and had, the cinder blocks underneath it. So it was level and it was secure. And I remember laying on my back and just looking up at the ceiling, wondering what's going to happen, because this storm, it was a scary storm, to be honest with you. The camper did one of these numbers. It tilted. Like something had hit it. And the camper tilted, and when it came back down, I pulled open the curtain and I saw something not running, walking into the woods. And what I saw, at like the right time, it was partially lit by a flash of lightning, and it was black and massive. Bigger than the female we saw. Next morning we go out there, it had rained so much, there was no chance of a track, period. When it walked into the woods, it walked right by this tree that my dad had kept up. I don't know why. And I said, Dad, it walked right underneath this branch. And he's like, how? I go, Dad, its head almost touched this branch. It was almost 10 feet tall. It was almost 10 feet tall. And when we looked at the side of the camper, I can't even put my arms out how wide it was, but there were 2 huge dents in the side. Like it had ran and just tried to put all its weight behind it and try to push it over on its side. And my brother comes out, he's like, what hit the side of the camper last night? And my dad goes, a branch. So, but and just with experiences around that, when we were cutting trees and cutting brush and stuff, if it was too heavy for us to lift, my dad would have to go rent equipment. He would come back with that equipment and he would be moving it and stuff. Well, at the end of the day, we'd finish up, the next day, we'd go back to finish up. Some of these trees were already moved. Piles of brush was already moved. So it's like she kind of understood that we were not meaning any harm, and my dad wasn't going in and just cutting everything down. He was selecting each tree. He's making sure. My dad was very mindful my dad was raised in Alaska. So when it comes to that type of stuff, he's very conscious about it, very, very respectful about it. It's just something that he'd always had. He always tried to instill it in me and my brothers. And when you go hunting, you thank that animal for providing for you. You thank the spirits for providing that animal for you. You're harvesting something out of the woods. You be thankful for it. And that's how it was. So I want to say that do I think it was a family unit? Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a family unit there. I think the big one, I think, was not the father, but I think it was maybe like maybe a son. Definitely saw the mother, and my brother later on came out and said that he had seen 2 juveniles, 2 smaller ones, that when we would go out and play in the woods and we'd listen to music, he said he'd see them sometimes just in the inside of the woods, kind of watching us and listening to the music. And whenever we got up or we turned the music off, they would get up and they would leave. So, so that was the area. And I've Google mapped it since then. That area is completely gone. It's all housing developments, and there is no remnants of the woods there anymore. It's gone.
So you're a kid, you're out there, you experience all this stuff. What's going through your mind? Like, what do you think? Have you heard about Bigfoot before this? Like, is this something that you maybe kind of halfway knew about? And when you saw it, the first time? Was there a smell? And then I also like to ask people, was there a feeling? Because a lot of people express a feeling of fear, dread, sickness. Did you feel anything like that when you saw her?
Okay, so number one, I did know about Bigfoot because I saw a Patterson Gimlin film when I was younger. Not too much younger. I was 9, 10 when I saw it. And I was fascinated. I was one of those kids that went to the library and I tried to find anything and everything I possibly could about Bigfoot. I even went, that was a school library. I even went to the public library and was like looking for news articles. So you know the little microfilm or whatever it had, you flip through it. I'm aging myself here. I'm almost 52, so it wasn't, there was no computer, to look at. So, and I was looking for everything. And back then, I had no clue on how to search, what to look for. I didn't know, I'm thinking Bigfoot. How am I going to find it? But what I found in the libraries, it didn't quench my thirst. It just made me want more and more and more. How I felt, honestly, how I felt around her, because I saw her on more than one occasion. Now, it wasn't like when I first saw her, and I'm a firm believer that if they want you to see them, it's almost a blessing. People can say different. I mean, and everybody's experience is way different. But if something wants to show itself to you, it will allow you to see it. And I think that's what she was doing. She was allowing us to let us know, like, hey, you guys are new in this area. We just want you to know that we're here. And I didn't feel any type of dread or fear or anything from her. Now, the one that pushed our camper, I had seen him on multiple occasions. It was never clear. It was never like, oh, look, there he is. I see him clearly. You would get this feeling of dread or this overwhelming feeling of fear in an area that you normally would never have that fear. Like we'd build a tree fort out there, and me and my brother had been in that tree fort 1,000,001 times. And there have been a couple of times where we were in the tree fort, and I just felt like, man, something's not right here. And we look out the window, and we could see something, but we couldn't clearly see what it was. And that's after my brother said, oh yeah, I'd seen the little ones before, so he's like, we need to go. And so we would climb down out of the tree fort and we would take off, and with him, I definitely felt uneasy around him. I think the only reason he never did anything like directly to us was because of the female and possibly the male, the mom and the dad. Okay. Scent wise, smell, I did smell that before, but not like, oh, there she is. I would catch whiffs of it, and a lot of times I would pass it off for a skunk, but it's almost like a sweet, sour, musty, rotting smell to it at times. It's just imagine Cousin It, who has never taken a shower or bath in his entire life, and just doesn't care when he goes number 2 that his hair gets in the way when he's cleaning himself up. And that's the kind of smell that it is. And I've had smelled that a couple of times, but when I did see the female, I never smelled anything.
It's almost like they can make you smell them when they want you to. I've heard people talk about that. They've got sweat glands, and when they need to, they can do that. But what an incredible experience. And I always ask people this, and nobody knows for sure, but what do you think Bigfoot is? After having those experiences, what do you think it is?
Well, at the time I'm thinking, oh, it's the missing link. It's the missing link, But then listening to other podcasts and really reading more things and reviewing more things, they are something on their own. They have their own branch. They are a humanoid, but they're on their own branch. They really are. And it's just not like, you have the family tree, the tree of creation or whatever. They have their own branch. Now, off that branch, they have other branches that come off of it because, you hear about the wood boogers down south. You hear about them in Oklahoma. You hear about them in Texas. You hear about them in Australia, the Yowie. You hear about the Yeti in Nepal. You know, I don't think, I think the only, I mean, I think every state has had some type of sighting. Maybe even Hawaii. I'm not sure. I know Hawaii has like the little people, but I think that there's at least one sighting in every freaking state. I mean, if you think about it, and then huge up in Canada as well. So, they're a humanoid of some kind. Are they more animal than human? Sometimes yes. Are they more human than animal? Maybe. They're not stupid. They're not stupid. I believe there's so much proof out there. They have their own language. Okay. Do I think that they can blend in like the predator? No, I don't think so. I just think they are masters of their domain. I mean, you have to think about it. Look what they're born into. Look at what they're raised in, and look at the environment. They are survivalists. They are masters of adaptation. Very skillful hunters. I do believe they use tools. I mean, they build shelters. We've seen them. I think they grieve. I think they bury their dead. Again, there's so many things out there that tell you this is an intelligent life form. I don't think it's an alien. I just think it is another, maybe a relic hominid. It's something out there that has existed alongside of us, has coexisted alongside us for hundreds of years. It's just like any time you go out fishing, you have a chance of pulling something up from the depths of the ocean that is supposed to be extinct, and there it is. So
yeah, there's a lot that we don't know, and I think that's what intrigues me about it's the mystery behind it, and I appreciate you sharing your story, and it was really a very unique story and a very scary story, but I appreciate you doing that. I also want to tell you, man, I appreciate your service. Very thankful for our military, man, so I appreciate you coming on, and we're going to bring you back. Dan's got some more stories to tell, so we're going to have it back on the podcast. But if you have a story that you want to share with us, we would love to hear from you guys, because without you, we wouldn't have a podcast. So reach out to me at video@jscreativear.com, and we will talk to you in the next episode.